but it's a picture of what life is intended to be, and it's Philippians 1, of course. It's page 1023, and a picture of what life is in his dear Son. Philippians 2 and 1. Thought it would be good to read that and see that is the real life that God has planned for us. I wouldn't say it was a nightmare last night, nightmare, all ghosties and fearful things, but a nightmare in the sense of what the church had become. It was really quite remarkable, It was as if God showed me the meaninglessness that was increasingly being the norm in church life and in churches today. No one talked very much about God or about what his will was. They were preoccupied with arguing about how they felt about life and what was going on in the world. And increasingly, I felt they had no notion of what was right or wrong, and they had no truths of any kind that still echoed in their minds. It was as if they had forgotten completely, or hardly ever read the Bible, or hardly ever heard of truth or love or joy or peace. And they were all preoccupied with arguing about the current political situation or the economic situation, or they were just socializing. It was filled with a kind of socializing attitude. And I thought, I can see a glimpse of that at times when they give you shots, of apparent Pentecostal types. They aren't really Pentecostal, but they're imitating the Pentecostal, singing out loud and swaying back and forward with the music, that you see now in so many pictures of modern churches. And that was the whole atmosphere. What was scary, what was frightening, was you felt they had no idea of a world outside that. And they had no idea of what a church was. They were just a group of human beings who were lost in their feelings and lost in the atmosphere they were creating among themselves, preoccupied with themselves. That was the big thing that came home to me. But it was frightening, that the church had lost all sense of truth or right. It was as if no one knew about it, and no one was at all interested in discussing it or talking about it. They were preoccupied with, it seemed to me, either arguing or talking about the latest movie, or the latest event that had taken place in the world, or some were talking about politics. But there was no sense of any objective truth that they even knew about, let alone discussed or talked about. So it was quite frightening, and I don't know how I managed to see it, of course, but it was a picture of, it seemed to me, a world gone mad, certainly a church gone mad, certainly a group of people who had no idea of what life was about and were utterly taken up with just the momentary petty events that were taking place either in their own life or in the lives of others. So it was surprising, not bad enough to awaken me, and not scary in that sense or frightening, but bewildering. I thought, no, the church could not become that. But I suppose we can see examples of it already tending in that direction. And it certainly came home to me that we may well have here and the others, of course, who still experience it, we may well have here among us maybe some of the last pictures of people being realistic about why they're here or what life is about. And certainly there was, in this scene that I saw, there was a total absence. I mean, there was no mention of this at all, the Bible. There was no thought of a hymn book with positive, absolute truths expressed in it. There was nothing that fed them any ideas outside what were issuing from themselves and their chaotic minds. So I would imagine, that the churches will become more and more kind of discussion groups or debating societies, or places where you can, as they say, be yourself, in all your chaos. And it'll be more and more difficult to get what we regard as normal, a group of people dealing with the truths that have been set forth in the Bible. So it brought home to me how important it was to know what life is meant to be like, and that it is meant to be like Philippians, and not being preoccupied with ourselves, but being concerned with each other and putting the other person before yourself and ministering to them in a gentle and living way. And so that's part of why I suggested reading Philippians, because of that dreadful scene that I saw that life could become. And I honestly wonder if we haven't seen trends and tendencies in that direction even now, because at times you see some of the things that go on in churches and you think there's no meaning in it. There's no point in it. There's no direction in it. There's no one to say this is right or this is wrong. It's just a bunch of people kind of having a social time together. And it may well be, that our society will become more and more like that. And it'll be more and more difficult to get the experience that, of course, we've taken for granted for years. And it brought home to me how good God has been to us. Here we are. I reckon that I started 49 years ago. I think 49 years ago I started Romans 1:1, at the time just of the Vatican Council. And we've been sharing these things for almost 50 years. So we are very privileged, and of course grateful to our Father who has kept us not just within grasp of the truths, but kept us in our own lives with pretty much constantly, day by day, certainly weekly, but day by day, checking our own lives against what we believe truth is, So that's just a aside.